You dare send a sniper? What's he gonna do, tickle me from 1,000? That was the last sentence Admiral Varkon ever spoke. The word hung half-finished in the air as the glass dome above his throne exploded with a deafening crack. A red mist burst from the back of his skull before his body even realized it had died. He slumped forward, dead mid-smirk, mid-sentence, mid-gloat, and the entire galaxy fell into stunned silence. The camera drone continued hovering, broadcasting the death of the most feared admiral in the Zentari Empire to every corner of known space. There was no music, no sound effects, no triumphant speech. Just a body, a chair, and a trail of blood running down the steps of power. Galactic News Network played the clip 5 times in the first minute. Social media shattered under the weight of the replay. Some thought it was fake, a glitch, or an internal power struggle. But the Zentari flagship had 20 layers of orbital shielding and 2 platoons of bodyguards. No one ever got close to Varkon. No one even tried. Until today. Until one bullet shut down a warlord who had never known fear. Earth didn't claim responsibility. Not officially. At least, not yet. Inside a hidden Earth Defense Command center buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Aiden watched the clip on loop, arms folded, expression unreadable. His staff stood frozen, eyes wide, unsure whether to cheer, panic, or vomit. One of the young techs stammered, "Sir, did we?" Aiden slowly took a sip of his coffee and muttered, "Bullseye." No smile, no gloating. Just 2 syllables, soaked in grim satisfaction. Earth hadn't authorized the hit. Not that anyone would believe that now. The shot was too precise, too personal. There had been no announcement, no declaration of war, just one bullet and a galaxy-sized consequence. Now everyone wanted answers. The Council. The Empire. Earth's own terrified government. One bullet had shifted galactic politics, and the trigger puller was a ghost. Somewhere inside Earth's black archives, a photo was pulled out of a forgotten file. Faded, creased, taken during a long-dead campaign. A man crouched behind enemy lines, camouflage ghillie suit soaked in mud, scope reflecting the sun, face obscured by shadows. The file was stamped, call sign, Whisper. Status, missing. Last seen, Altheron front. Comment, unconfirmed Kia. Across the barracks of Earth's elite sniper training academy, recruits huddled around tablets replaying the assassination. One muttered, "You think it was Whisper?" Another scoffed. "Whisper's a myth. Like Santa with a silencer." A third, older soldier leaned against a wall and said, "I met him once. In the jungle of Harkoon 9. He shot a fly off my helmet just to make a point." They laughed, until the video played again. The timing. The drop. The wind compensation. Only one man alive, or maybe dead, could have made that shot from that distance. The legend just became real. Meanwhile, the Zentari High Council chamber was in chaos. Holograms of admirals, governors, and royal enforcers screamed over one another. Security feeds were dissected in slow motion. Forensics confirmed the kill shot came from a high-velocity slug, non-Zentari origin. The shooter was not in the palace, not in the building, not even on the broadcast platform. The sniper had fired from outside the palace dome. 4 kilometers away. Through reinforced hexaglass. In a single breath, Varkon had been erased by someone who didn't even need to get close. The Empire wanted blood. Earth became the primary suspect, and a bounty was placed, 900 million credits for the sniper's capture. Dead or alive. Every alien mercenary, pirate, and bounty hunter in the quadrant began sharpening knives and cleaning scopes. Earth was under watch. But Whisper, if it was him, wasn't on Earth. In the Zentari's outer rim, deep in a craggy moon base once used for deep space artillery, a lone figure moved quietly through ruins. His gear was ancient, patched with alien tech and battlefield salvage. He didn't speak. He didn't smile. He adjusted his rifle with the care of a musician tuning a beloved instrument. Then he sat cross-legged at a rusted steel table and resumed a half-finished chess game. No audience. No cameras. Just silence and strategy. In the corner, the helmet of a dead Zentari soldier sat propped up like a trophy. He didn't do it for Earth. He didn't do it for war. He did it for his team. For the 9 soldiers wiped out by Varkan's orbital command during the Battle of Altair. They begged for evacuation. Earth ignored them. Varkan bombed them out of existence. Whisper survived. Barely. And for 5 years he waited, watched, and planned. Until today. Until one bullet made history. Earth's generals convened in emergency meetings. Some wanted to deny everything. Others wanted to find Whisper before the Zentari did. General Aiden remained calm. You don't catch Whisper. You survive him. If he's back, then every Admiral out there just grew a second heart, and both are pounding. Zentari media labeled the sniper a terrorist. The people called him the Shadow Marksman. On Earth, protesters demanded answers while meme makers immortalized the moment. But Whisper didn't care. He wasn't after fame. He was after justice. Or maybe vengeance. Maybe both. One of the Zentari's most ruthless admirals, Valcora the Iron Veil, watched the assassination footage from her warship. She clenched her metal fist and ordered, "Deploy Protocol Cinder. We burn every world he's touched." This wasn't war, it was a message. And she was right. Whisper hadn't just pulled a trigger. He'd pulled the pin out of a galactic grenade. Somewhere, far from the politics and the panic, Whisper cleaned his rifle one last time before whispering to himself, "Now they'll remember the dead." Then he faded into the mist, leaving no footprints. Only fear. Only silence. Only the echo of a bullet that spoke louder than an entire empire. The news of Admiral Varkan's death didn't just ripple through the galaxy, it detonated. Every Zentari-controlled world shifted into emergency lockdown. Naval fleets reoriented their formations. Intelligence networks lit up like constellations, all searching for one name that had resurfaced like a ghost from an old war. Earth tried to contain this situation with diplomatic statements, calling for calm and denying all involvement. But no one believed it. The shot was too surgical, the humiliation too complete. The Zentari didn't care about denial. They wanted retribution. And the bounty was only the beginning. The sniper who fired that shot wasn't just an assassin now, he was a symbol. A symbol of rebellion, of weakness, of vulnerability in what had been considered an invincible regime. Zentari warlords, once feared across solar systems, now watched the sky with suspicion. One of their own had been eliminated in a public display of raw, undeniable skill. That kind of message was not forgiven in their culture. It was answered with blood. Zentari intelligence deployed its elite unit known as the Black Orbit. No ranks. No uniforms. Just operatives bred and trained to hunt the untraceable. They operated outside of protocol, answerable only to the Council itself. Their directive was simple: locate the sniper, identify affiliations, erase all evidence. Failure was not considered a possible outcome. The Zentari didn't believe in ghosts. So they hunted him like a man. A very dangerous, very vengeful man. But Whisper wasn't just hiding. He was moving. Each step calculated. He changed planets like changing coats. His scent disappeared in orbit. His energy signature mimicked dying satellites. He knew their systems because once, long ago, Earth trained him to outsmart them all. And when Earth abandoned him, he didn't forget. He simply sharpened every skill in silence. Waiting. Inside a remote war museum on the frozen moon of Calderon, a group of mercenaries argued in front of a hologram. The bounty for Whisper had now risen past the salary of a planetary governor. Each mercenary had a theory. One believed Whisper was a rogue AI. Another claimed he was a clone of an ancient Earth general. A third said nothing, only staring at a map riddled with crimson threads. The location of the shot was public knowledge. But how had the shooter positioned himself there undetected, with no exit trail, and escaped unseen? That wasn't a job. That was a message from someone who didn't miss. Back on Earth, General Aiden sat in a private office under the Pentagon's deepest level. A dusty file rested on his desk. It was the original Whisper dossier, marked with multiple redacted lines and a final stamp. MIA, presumed dead. Aiden ran his fingers along the old photograph inside, the one taken before Alheran. He remembered that operation. He remembered the call for evac. And he remembered the silence that followed. Earth's leadership at the time feared a diplomatic crisis with the Zentari, and decided to cut losses. Whisper and his team were left to die. But Whisper didn't die. Aiden had always suspected. He saw glimpses, random assassinations of war criminals, disappearances of certain Zentari officers, unexplained sniper kills that defied logic. They were chalked up as anomalies. But Aiden knew. He just never had proof. Until now. Varkan's death wasn't just a kill, it was Whisper's resurrection. Elsewhere, a Zentari scout vessel landed on a barren planet near the Shawl Nebula. It had tracked a faint ballistic residue leading from the assassination site. In a canyon hidden by electromagnetic storms, the scouts found an abandoned sniper perch. The setup was perfection. Bipod marks on the rock. Wind direction pins stabbed into sand. Even a shell casing, polished and clean, left behind like a signature. And carved into the stone, 3 words etched with a combat knife, "For my squad." The squad leader of the scout unit trembled. He had studied Earth tactics. He recognized the level of preparation. He transmitted the data back to Zentari High Command and said one thing before departing. "He's not fighting a war. He's sending a message. This is personal." Inside a rusted cargo hauler drifting past a mining colony, Whisper disassembled his rifle slowly. The components were alien. Modified. Untraceable. He moved with purpose, no emotion on his face. He wasn't chasing glory or payment. He didn't need revenge for himself. He needed it for the voices that never got to speak. For the bodies left under rubble while politicians traded their deaths for handshakes. Whisper believed in consequences. And he was the one delivering them. He checked a small screen embedded in his gauntlet. It showed the Zentari bounty board. New names were added daily. Officers. Strategists. War profiteers. He wasn't interested in the pawns. He wanted the architects. The ones who gave the orders and smiled through peace talks. His next target wasn't just another admiral. It was someone he had already met during the Altaran campaign. A Zentari negotiator named Tavrix, the same man who assured Earth Command that there would be no orbital strikes. Then watched from orbit while Varkan wiped them out. The screen changed. A news report played. Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council was assaulted during peace talks. Accused of harboring the assassin. Earth continued to deny. The Council debated sanctions. The Zentari wanted more than diplomacy. They wanted to draw blood in front of witnesses. General Aiden watched the news with clenched fists. He had warned them. Earth's government was too cowardly to admit the truth and too naive to understand the price. Whisper wasn't just a ghost anymore. He was a fuse burning toward detonation. And they couldn't stop him. In a remote Zentari temple, a priestess read from ancient prophecy. Her followers listened in silence as she interpreted the omens of Varkan's death. "A shadow with a steel eye will pierce the tyrants. The one who returns from silence will end the Empire's voice." They believed it was poetic allegory. She knew better. She had once served as a liaison to Earth during the war. She had seen the soldier they left behind. And when his name crossed her path again, she whispered it in fear. Whisper. Across stars, systems, and silence, the hunt began. But Whisper wasn't running. He was already moving toward the next target. Calm. Controlled. Invisible. A force with a trigger. Not just a man, but a sentence waiting to end mid-word. Ask ChatGPT. The Galactic Council chamber was carved into a hollowed asteroid, orbiting a golden gas giant like a parasite with political teeth. Diplomats from 100 species filled the chamber with noise, outrage, fear, and calculation. Giant screens floated mid-air, replaying the footage of Admiral Varkan's final moment from different angles. Some watched it with cold fascination, others with concealed amusement, but none with indifference. One human had changed the direction of galactic diplomacy with a single, perfect bullet. And the galaxy had no idea what to do about it. Earth's ambassador, Tevin Routh, stood in the center of the circle like a goat at a predator summit. His voice was calm but strained. He repeated the same line for the third time. Earth had no knowledge of the shooter's identity. The strike was not authorized. Earth was committed to cooperation and de-escalation. A lizard-faced delegate from the Trusari Republic hissed and slammed a scaled fist on his podium. Another diplomat from the Teller Syndicate demanded sanctions. A few voices called for Earth's full disarmament. Tevin felt the pressure mount as whispers about preemptive strikes echoed through the chamber like thunder in a storm system. Above them all, a camera silently tracked every motion. Unbeknownst to the Council, far beyond the asteroid, a tiny satellite spun in quiet orbit. It was disguised as debris, built from junk panels and scavenged solar fins. It carried no weapons. Just one man. One rifle. One target. Whisper lay prone inside the satellite, eyes behind a scope that tracked the proceedings down to the twitch of a diplomat's jaw. He was not here to fire. Not yet. He was here to remind them. He had made his point with a bullet. Now he would speak through fear. Inside the council chamber, tension crackled like static. Tevin tapped the side of his communicator. A coded phrase was transmitted through secure channels back to Earth Command. 2 words. He's watching. General Aiden received the message and nodded grimly. Whisper had positioned himself close enough to end another life mid-debate. It wasn't a threat. It was control. They were all sitting in a sniper's theater, actors unaware they were already in the second act. Across the galaxy, Zentari propaganda pushed a new narrative. They painted the sniper as a terrorist. Earth was accused of harboring rogue agents. The image of Whisper was recreated using digital estimations. Posters were scattered across space stations, bounty updates delivered hourly. But the real Whisper hadn't been seen. Not even once. No security feed had caught his face. No trace of his ship. Only his work remained, precise, efficient, and deadly. Meanwhile, in a shadowed alley of a decaying trade city, a figure knelt before an open crate. Inside were fragments of alien weapons, disassembled, illegal, and powerful. The buyer was tall, human, dressed in layered rags and goggles. The seller didn't ask questions. You didn't question a man who radiated calm like radiation before a meltdown. The man in rags picked up a single component and nodded. "This'll do." He dropped a tiny earth coin into the vendor's hand and vanished into the darkness. Behind him, painted on a crumbling wall, was a mural of Varkan's last breath. Below it, someone had scrawled one word in red paint. Whisper. Elsewhere, deep in the engine rooms of a Zentari diplomatic cruiser, an assassin adjusted her robes. She was not officially listed on any manifest. Her blade was woven into her clothes. Her orders were simple. Earth's ambassador must not leave the council alive. Not through diplomacy. Not through bribes. The Empire wanted a message sent, and this time, it would not be through words or bullets, it would be through blood on marble floors. She moved like a ghost through the corridors, timing her approach with the pulse of the ship's artificial gravity. She opened a maintenance hatch, slipped through a crawlspace, and paused just above the ambassador's chamber. Tevin sat alone in his room, sipping recycled water, his hands trembling. He felt the weight of millions pressing down on his spine. The galaxy didn't believe him, and maybe they were right not to. He didn't know who Whisper was. But he knew Earth had created him. Trained him. Then abandoned him. He sighed and stared at the wall, unaware that death crouched just 3 feet above him, blade ready, breathing steady. And then the lights flickered. Just for a split second. A silent blip. The assassin blinked and reached for her blade. Her hand never made it. A crack echoed, soft but final. A single hole appeared in her forehead. She slumped silently inside the vent, blade clattering onto metal. Security rushed into the ambassador's room, confused, weapons drawn. Tevin never saw the shooter. But he knew who it was. A sniper somewhere out there had just saved him. Or warned him. Or both. News of the failed assassination spread within hours. Zenthari officials denied involvement, claiming sabotage or rogue pirates. But the message was clear. Whisper had struck again. This time not to kill a tyrant, but to protect a pawn. That changed everything. The council didn't know whether to fear him or thank him. They couldn't predict his motives, his allegiances, or his limits. That made him more dangerous than any army. Back at Earth Command, General Aiden stared at satellite telemetry. Whisper's signal had vanished again. One of his analysts asked the obvious question. Whose side is he on? Aiden didn't answer. He simply walked over to a wall lined with old medals and pulled down one. It belonged to the Altaran squad. The one that never came home. The one they never talked about. Aiden held the medal like it was a loaded weapon. He didn't need to answer the question. Whisper wasn't on anyone's side. He was on the side of consequences. Somewhere, in a quiet chamber lit only by a flickering hologram, Whisper listened to the council broadcast replaying. He noted who lied, who hesitated, who tried to twist facts, and who stayed silent. He marked each name down. Not all of them would become targets. But some already were. He took a deep breath, adjusted the sight on his next rifle, and whispered to no one, just like he always did. One breath. One shot. One empire at a time. Ask ChatGPT. Across the outer systems, words spread faster than light. The sniper was not only alive, not only real, but now playing by his own rules. Assassinating an admiral was one thing. Preventing the assassination of a diplomat during live peace talks was another. Whisper wasn't just hunting anymore. He was shaping the battlefield with precision strikes and psychological pressure that no military doctrine could counter. The Zenthari were losing more than commanders. They were losing control. In the neon-lit streets of a mercenary hub orbiting the red moon of Droska, a crowd of bounty hunters and rogue snipers gathered around digital boards tracking the growing bounty on Whisper's head. It had just doubled again. Whispers and theories moved between the crowd like currency. They called him the ghost between suns. They said he didn't need ships, didn't use crews, and vanished before any scanner could find him. Some scoffed at the myths. Others cleaned their scopes and plotted routes. But one thing was unanimous. Whoever captured Whisper would become immortal. Or end up in pieces. At the edge of this restless crowd, a lean figure with pale green skin and eyes like cracked glass watched silently. She didn't speak. She didn't boast. Her name was Kira Tharn, a bounty sniper who only accepted jobs if she could kill her targets at longer distances than she could see. Her rifle was customized, fused with 3 alien technologies and a nervous system from a cloned predator. She studied Whisper's last known positions, the shot patterns, the timestamps, the recoil diagnostics from sensor echoes. And then she smiled, just slightly. She whispered to herself, "He's not hiding. He's luring." On a dead mining planet where acid winds never stopped, 2 ships landed in silence. One belonged to a group of high-tier mercenaries. The other, smaller, was an unregistered drone carrier, stripped of serial numbers, silent on all frequencies. The mercenaries stormed the old tunnels beneath the cliffs, guided by heat signatures and a shredded piece of Whisper's old gear found in a previous kill zone. They expected traps, ambushes, even mines. But they didn't expect silence. No movement. No signal. Just a slow countdown on their HUDs. Inside the cave system, they reached a central chamber where an abandoned sniper nest was waiting. There were 3 rifles left arranged in a row. Each was rigged to fire remotely. And surrounding the entire chamber were pressure-activated concussion rounds facing inward. One mercenary crouched and saw it. "It's a kill room," he whispered. That was when the entrance collapsed behind them. The countdown hit 0. The blast wasn't lethal. It was theatrical. It scattered them in pieces, yes, but mostly pride. Their armor held. Their egos didn't. From a nearby ridge, Whisper watched through magnified lenses as smoke filled the mine's entrance, and the mercs stumbled out cursing. He didn't fire. Not this time. This wasn't about kills. This was about proving a point. Even when they came for him with numbers, tech, and rage, he was already a step ahead. He packed his gear, erased his trail with chemical dust, and vanished before the first gunship passed overhead. Back on Earth, General Aiden paced in front of a digital display showing mercenary casualties, Zenthari troop movements, and a line of red XS slowly forming a crescent across 5 systems. Each X was a location where a Zenthari asset had disappeared, resigned, or died under strange circumstances. Whisper was drawing a pattern. And it wasn't random. Aiden's aide studied the data and said, "He's hurting them." Aiden turned slowly. "Toward what?" The aide hesitated, then said, "He's cornering the top admirals. Someone's about to be next." In a derelict city floating above a gas giant, Whisper slipped into the underground ruins of an abandoned base. His face, mostly covered by desert cloth and dust goggles, looked even older under the flickering lights. His hands, though weathered, moved with perfect memory. He scavenged parts from forgotten drones, rigged lenses from surveillance trash, and recalibrated his rifle with alien gyroscopic stabilizers. He wasn't building for a shot. He was building for a stage. That night, a transmission was intercepted by every warship within range. It was silent for 10 seconds. Then a voice spoke. Calm. Quiet. Measured. "You hunted the wrong ghost. You paid the wrong killers. You pointed at the wrong world. And now, the storm you buried is aiming back." The message ended with coordinates. No name. No origin signature. Just a point on a map that made the Zenthari fleet panic. At the location, Admiral Track Vaughn, the youngest of the Zenthari Tri-Command, was meeting with private arms dealers aboard a mobile fortress in orbit around a volcanic moon. He believed he was safe. Surrounded by ships, mercs, shields, drones, and enough armor to survive a meteor strike. He was still laughing when the lights flickered. For 3 seconds, power cut out across the platform. When it returned, everyone was still alive. Except Track Vaughn. One whole. Center mass. No shattered windows. No breach. No flash. The shot had come from inside. But every weapon and camera had been accounted for. His bodyguards were clean. No evidence of tampering. Just one slug embedded in his chest that was not made by any known manufacturer. Panic erupted. Officers turned on each other. A bounty on Whisper doubled again. But he was already gone. Orbiting nearby in a stolen pod with no propulsion, Whisper floated silently while eating ration bars and adjusting his scope for his next move. The pod drifted slowly toward an asteroid belt where he would hide for repairs. But someone else had found him first. A small skiff approached from the opposite side. Inside was a boy, barely 17, wiry frame, eyes too old for his age. Whisper didn't draw his weapon. He simply opened the hatch and waited. The boy stepped in, hands raised, and said only one word. "Teach." Whisper said nothing. He handed the boy a pair of infrared lenses and pointed to the seat. Over the next few hours, he spoke very little. He didn't give a lecture. He didn't ask questions. He only handed the boy pieces of a sniper rifle, one at a time, and waited to see if he could assemble them. The boy was slow but sharp. Whisper nodded once. That was enough. He wasn't recruiting. He was preparing. The galaxy had too many tyrants. And one ghost was not enough anymore. In the silence between stars, where no one could hear judgment, a lesson was underway. Not in books. Not in ranks. But in patience, calculation, and inevitability. Whisper didn't believe in mercy. He believed in clarity. He wasn't making a partner. He was forging a successor. And across every comm frequency, the legend continued to grow, stitched together by rumor and fear. But the truth was simpler than all of them knew. Whisper was not a man to be hunted. He was the edge of war itself. A living correction. And he was just getting started. Inside the highest chamber of the Galactic Council, panic had matured into strategy. The assassination of Admiral Varkon had been horrifying. The disappearance of Admiral Track Vaughn was worse. 2 admirals gone in weeks. 2 impossible shots. No witnesses. No trace. The Zentari Empire now stood wounded and twitching. Whisper's legend wasn't just spreading, it was infiltrating the minds of leaders, turning confidence into paranoia. Council members met in secret, away from official broadcasts, whispering about fallback plans and political reshuffles. They had learned one brutal truth: power no longer protected them. Behind the scenes, a new plan began to take form. Whisper had become the perfect excuse to realign the galactic balance of power. A faction within the council, long tired of the Zentari's dominance, began to act. They didn't praise Whisper. They feared him like everyone else. But they understood something no one else dared say aloud. A man like him couldn't be stopped, only redirected. If he was going to hunt, let him hunt the right targets. Let him clean up the mess they were too afraid to confront. But to manipulate a ghost, they needed bait. And for that, they turned to Earth. On Earth, General Aiden stood in the war room, surrounded by hollow-faced commanders. The planet wasn't under attack yet, but the pressure was building like a storm over an ocean. Civil protests were growing. Conspiracy theories raged. Aiden was summoned to a private call with the planetary president, who wasted no time. They were being forced to cooperate with the Zentari intelligence unit for a joint mission. Earth would provide a data feed, coordinates, potential hideouts, intercepted signals. In exchange, Earth would be spared from retribution. Aiden knew it was a trap. He also knew it didn't matter. He nodded once, then left the room without a word. Deep in a volcanic range on a forgotten moon, Whisper monitored the feed. His new companion, the boy, sat nearby assembling a second rifle. The boy didn't talk much. He listened. He learned. Whisper let him ask one question each day. That was the rule. That day, the boy asked, "Do you ever miss being part of a squad?" Whisper looked out the window, scanning the smoke curling from the horizon. After a long pause, he said, "No. I miss them. Not the orders." The boy nodded, absorbing it. Whisper had begun targeting not just individuals, but supply lines and financial nodes. Zentari trade routes went dark. Weapon shipments disappeared. Corporate ships exploded in deep space, their wreckage left floating as warnings. Each time, the attacker was unseen. Each time, no one claimed responsibility. But each time, a single casing or a marked image remained. A calling card. The message was always the same. "I see you." Meanwhile, in the shadows of the Zentari homeworld, something darker stirred. Desperate for unity, the High Command initiated Project Echo, a classified operation designed to resurrect Admiral Varkon using a preserved genetic sample. The process was forbidden by multiple treaties, but they no longer cared about rules. The clone was accelerated using alien bioengines, grown in a hyperchamber surrounded by neural feeds replaying Varkon's life. Memories were reconstructed. Personality traits stitched back together. But something unexpected happened. The clone retained all of Varkon's memories, yes, but it developed a singular obsession. Not with Empire. Not with glory. With the man who had killed him. The clone emerged from the chamber not as a leader but as a weapon. It was smarter, colder, and void of distraction. It knew every weakness of the Zentari military, and worse, it knew Whisper. It had died looking into his scope. It remembered the fear. It wanted revenge, not power. The council was horrified. But they didn't dare stop it. They sent the clone to command a secret fleet built in the Vortha system, away from public channels. It was given a name: Project Retaliate. And its orders were simple: lure the sniper into the open. And kill him. On Earth, the intelligence exchange began. Earth pretended to share Whisper's old service logs. In truth, Aiden manipulated the information, feeding the Zentari paths that would lead them into dead zones, empty planets, and false bases. Aiden played a dangerous game. He didn't support Whisper's methods, but he had no patience for an empire that let a soldier die for politics. So he walked the line. He gave enough data to seem cooperative, but never enough to matter. But not everyone on Earth was loyal. Within Earth intelligence, a young analyst named Kren Othel watched the data streams and quietly sent encrypted fragments to a private channel. He was promised advancement, protection, wealth. All he had to do was leak a single set of coordinates. He did. The location was real. It was the volcanic moon where Whisper and the boy had last taken shelter. The betrayal came swift. A Zen-3 Black Ops team descended in full silence. Drop ships screamed across the atmosphere. The strike was surgical. By the time the boy noticed the unusual pulse in the air, it was too late. The cave erupted with fire. Rocks shattered. Metal twisted. Whisper pushed the boy out through a crack in the rear cavern and stayed behind. He took a position above the rubble, ignoring the burns across his back. One by one, the Zen-3 soldiers entered the kill zone. One by one, he dropped them with headshots before they could even see him. Then came the last one. Not a soldier. Not a grunt. The clone. It stepped into the clearing, eyes gleaming with calculated hate. Whisper recognized him instantly. The face. The posture. The smirk. And then he heard the voice. You missed a shot. I remember it. 3 seconds before death. You hesitated. That hesitation ends now. Whisper didn't answer. He didn't blink. He took the shot. The clone moved fast, inhuman fast. The bullet grazed its shoulder instead of hitting center mass. It returned fire with brutal precision. The rifle in Whisper's hands shattered. He rolled behind a broken slab and drew a sidearm. The clone moved closer. But as it aimed, the boy appeared above from the ridge with the second rifle Whisper had trained him to build. He hesitated, scared. The clone turned. The shot was not clean. It hit the clone's ribs, piercing through synthetic tissue and armor. Not fatal. But enough. Whisper lunged forward with a blade and drove it into the clone's chest before firing the last bullet into its throat. The clone dropped, twitching. Its eyes faded to black. Whisper knelt over it, breathing heavy, then looked to the boy. The boy was shaking. Whisper walked to him and handed over the broken sidearm. Then without anger or praise he said, You saw what trust gets you. Don't forget it. The boy didn't cry. He nodded. And in that moment, the boy understood what it meant to be a ghost. Elsewhere, the traitor Kren Othel received payment in full. Moments later, he opened a package on his doorstep. Inside was a single bullet. On it was etched one word. Traitor. He screamed. But no one heard. And somewhere, Whisper watched the footage one last time before erasing it from his device. Justice wasn't law. Justice was aim. And his aim never shook. The stage had been set long before anyone realized it. The power shifts, the sabotage, the silent bullets, all of it had led to this final moment. The Galactic Council prepared for what they called a Unity broadcast, a grand display meant to calm the spiral of fear infecting the outer systems. The goal was to stabilize the narrative, to remind the galaxy that order still held. But beneath the diplomatic smiles and camera-ready speeches, every soul in that chamber was waiting for one thing. Would he strike again? The clone of Admiral Varkon, now simply called Varkon by council decree, stood at the center podium. His voice was calm, steady, and full of venom buried beneath polished words. He spoke of healing, of punishing terrorism, of a new beginning for the Empire. He spoke like he had never died. He made sure everyone remembered his face. And then he began to mock the legend. He laughed lightly. A small chuckle at first, then deeper, louder. He called Whisper a myth inflated by fear, a failed human relic clinging to a sniper's fantasy. He even dared Earth to bring him out again. The room tensed. And then the feed froze. Across every screen in the galaxy, the transmission halted. The crowd inside the chamber panicked, but no explosion came. No screams. No sound. Just a flicker. The broadcast returned after a second, perfectly normal, except for one change. Varkon had stopped talking. His mouth hung half open, eyes wide. A line of crimson ran down the center of his forehead. He collapsed forward onto the council podium as silent chaos erupted. The elite guards moved too late. Medical drones arrived to confirm what everyone already knew. He had died mid-sentence. Again. This time, the shot had come from a diplomatic satellite, 26 kilometers above the asteroid station. A custom kinetic round, fired through compressed vacuum, piercing the exact panel of reinforced glass at the perfect angle. Not a single alarm had triggered. The shooter had arrived days ago inside a hollowed-out solar array and waited without food, water, or motion. No camera had caught him. No drone had seen his rifle move. Only after the shot, after the clone's body hit the floor, did they notice the satellite's rotation had changed by 1 degree. The council dissolved into chaos. Some fled. Some shouted. Some demanded emergency lockdowns. Others simply stood in stunned silence. They had failed. Their symbol of eternal power had been erased again, by the same ghosts they tried to kill. Across the systems, riots ignited, but not against Earth. This time the rebellion turned inward. The myth had become more than fear. It had become fuel. Smugglers painted his mark on their ships. Rebels in forgotten colonies saluted the sky. Even council members who once condemned him now whispered his name in awe. Not as a killer, but as balance. Earth, once accused, now stood untouched. General Aiden received a transmission with no origin code. It simply said, "It's done." There were no coordinates. No voice. Just the message. He stared at the screen, alone, as the lights of the war room blinked quietly behind him. He knew there would be no more shots. No more bodies. Whisper had finished what he came to do. And now, he would vanish again, into the blackness that birthed him. A week later, a small package arrived at Aiden's personal quarters. Inside was a bullet, marked not with a name, but a word. Peace. Beneath it was an old photo. The Altaran squad. Before the war. Before the betrayal. Before the ghosts. Aiden held it for a long time before locking it in his drawer. He told no one. The Galactic Council issued a new protocol, one that rewrote the rules of war engagement. For the first time, sniper warfare was treated not as military support but as a galactic threat class. A new directive, the Whisper Code, was quietly passed. It stated that any individual capable of making impossible shots was to be monitored, contained, or trained for diplomatic defense. It wasn't law. It was fear and paperwork. The galaxy had learned the cost of ignoring those they once discarded. On the outer rim, far from the crowded systems and surveillance grids, a small transport vessel drifted into orbit around an unnamed jungle planet. No call sign. No authorization. It descended through the clouds and disappeared among the green. There were no cities. No satellites. Just wild terrain and silence. In the deep canopy, beneath twisting vines and broken ruins, a man sat alone, carving notches into a piece of driftwood. He was older now. Slower. But the eyes still scanned every movement of the forest like they expected betrayal. The boy sat across from him, rifle across his knees, eyes on the treeline. He had grown. Sharper jaw. Steadier hands. He no longer asked questions. He only studied. Whisper handed him a chip device and said, "Choose your name. Not your call sign. Your name." The boy looked at the sky. Then he spoke the name of a friend he once lost in a war that never had medals. Whisper nodded and rose slowly, bones stiff from years of crawling through fire. They stood together on a ridge overlooking the jungle. The boy spoke at last. "What now?" Whisper stared into the distance. His voice came low, like gravel breaking through fog. "Now you watch. You wait. You teach. And when they forget again, you remind them. One breath. One shot." The boy repeated the phrase under his breath. A ritual now. A legacy. Back in the cities of power, they rewrote history. They called it political collapse. A cultural correction. An assassination by rogue elements. But none dared say the name openly anymore. Not out of fear. out of respect. To name him was to invoke him. And no one wanted to see that scope glint ever again. Somewhere, a child would hear the story for the first time. Not from textbooks, but from whispered tales by old rebels or retired soldiers. They'd ask, was he real? The answer would always come the same way. He was the bullet that ended an empire. He was the silence between wars. He was the one man who reminded the stars that power without justice ends with a whisper. And then the wind would move the leaves, like breath on steel, and the story would start again.